are having a crime committed against you, even if it's a small crime, especially if there's problems where you live, you need to involve the police. Now, that's assuming you still have a police force in your city. Since I've lived here, I've had multiple issues take place that I've written about before. There's a whole string of records at the police department in the community where I live because I'm not afraid to, to get law enforcement involved. Now, do I call for every little infraction that I see? Of course not. Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. We don't need to go overboard. And we need to use some common sense, right? There's going to be people that are always breaking the law. It doesn't matter what it is. People are going to be breaking the laws, but you can't call the police every single time it happens. I'm specifically talking about the times when you are having crimes that are committed against you. Oftentimes, unless it's an overt crime, I'm talking about the petty gray area stuff, right? Like the earbud this last weekend that fell out of my laundry basket. How did it get in there? There was no plausible explanation for how that got in there. And I knew when I went to the apartment complex management and explained the situation and asked if maintenance had been in my home. And they confirmed that maintenance had not been in my home, according to them, according to what they were willing to tell me, that it sounded crazy that that was happening and that I'm also having an issue with it. The thing was is that there was an actual item, physical item that did not belong to me in any way, shape, or form, and I could prove that. I was very certain I did not bring it into my home, right? So there has to be a different explanation for this, but there wasn't. There's only 3 to 4 very slim probable possibilities of how this happened. They're all slim. They're all highly improbable, but they're the only explanations I could come up with. And thankfully, when the law enforcement officer came out this last weekend, he was probably one of the best cops I've ever talked to. He fully admitted he thought that this call was going to be a waste of time. He thought that this wasn't going to go anywhere. And oh, this lady's just freaking out because she found something in the washing machine that didn't belong to her. Of course she does. It's an apartment complex. Until I started explaining everything the way I had explained it when I went live. He was willing to walk through all of those logical things for me. And because I proofread courtroom transcripts, I've proofread several depositions. I know how questions are asked in a logical linear order in order to remove or narrow down possibilities of what happened or what could have happened and where that process broke down, right? So I'm very familiar with this type of communication. And so he started asking me those types of questions. And I recognize that because in my job, in my work that I do as a technical writer, I'm very familiar with asking these types of questions. And I kind of make it a habit to do it when I'm trying to find something out myself. So we got along famously. The cop and I got along great. And he walked down through those possibilities with me, and he admitted that it was perplexing. I then took it a step further and asked him about how to check for trackers on my vehicle. Now, I have not found any, thankfully, as of this video, but I will make it a habit now that I understand how to scan for those to continue checking for that on a regular basis. And I just have to accept that if I want to continue living in any kind of a city here in the United States of America, that the way our economy is, the way that our government currently is, the way that people's tensions are very high, we have an illegal alien problem in this country. It's been known, especially for the last 4 years when it's been ramped up since, Biden took office. We are very aware of these things. We are very aware of the increased level of crime, tensions, and all these other kinds of problems that are contributing to people just saying, screw it, I'm going to commit a crime because there's a high chance I'm going to get away with it. That's what a lot of these petty criminals are doing. They just believe that they're always going to get away with it. Now, I'm the person that knows that that's not true. It's not true that a criminal, a bully, someone who's intimidating you or harassing you or stalking you even, will get away with that forever. They won't. Maybe in decades past it was a lot easier, but today it's not as easy to do. Whether or not a criminal pays for their crimes is fully dependent upon whether or not they can be caught, whether or not they can be pushed through the legal system properly, and whether or not you have an attorney general in your vicinity who is willing to prosecute certain crimes because some attorney generals in some cities here in the United States do not prosecute certain crimes. They're not interested in it for whatever political agenda they have, or there's not enough money in it, or whatever. And what a lot of citizens haven't figured out yet is that they're kind of on their own. Well, I wisened up to this around maybe a year ago when I moved into this apartment complex. And since then, petty crime has increased here, but it's also decreased in some other aspects. More and more neighbors are getting more cameras. More and more neighbors are willing to step it up, and they're willing to see that it's okay to talk about this stuff that's happening and it's okay to report it to the police. It's just a shock for a lot of people because they haven't realized yet that they have more power than they think they do. See, on a collective basis, the more valid filings that people make collectively, the more law enforcement personnel is going to be able to devote more resources to that area. If you are thankfully still in a city that will do that for you, collectively, these criminals and bullies will see an increased police presence. They're going to see an increase in neighbors willing to set up doorbell cameras and carry other such personal protective measures. Here in the United States, it's very legal, especially in Texas, to practice all kinds of self-defense methods. Use your imagination, right? And so you're going to find that a lot of these petty criminals, they eventually get tired of dealing with all of that. They understand that the risk of getting caught and reported is now increased, and they're going to be less likely to continue their behavior going forward, at least in this area in this manner. And part of that has proven to be true. Part of that has definitely proven to be true here. But there are still pockets where I know of neighbors here personally that are very afraid to report these things to the police. If you are having criminal behavior against you, even if it's in the gray area, but it's just not, things aren't adding up. I know it can sound crazy or like you're overreacting to certain things, but that's how sometimes some of this stuff works when it comes to crime or agendas against you personally. And I've lived through that in the past too. I'm almost 50 years old. I have lived through people trying to make my life a living hell just because they felt like they could. And unfortunately, our legal system today will entertain things at the courthouse steps that aren't even true. I understand at a very personal, intimate level this fear. And I want to make this video to encourage you. If you are having problems, go report it to the police. Start reporting it. I've found it very helpful from the time that I make the phone call to dispatch to the time that the police officer actually arrives is to take out a piece of paper, scratch paper, just get one sheet of paper. It could be the back of a piece of junk mail. It doesn't matter. Grab something to write with and just start bullet pointing the things you need to cover. Because in the course of conversation, you are allowed to refer down to this piece of paper. And you can tell them up front, I wrote everything down because I want to make sure I don't forget to tell you anything. Where would you like to start? And usually they're going to say, just tell me what you got. Tell me what's going on. Their best method of investigating is listening to a story. And eventually they'll start asking you questions and you can start answering those questions. And when they say, is there anything else? Even if you felt like it was the sloppiest, scariest conversation you have ever had, and you can hear yourself not talking right because things are not coming out in the right order because you're so nervous, that is when you can look down at the piece of paper you are holding in your hands and say, let me check. And then in that moment, your body immediately relaxes and you are able to go, yeah, we talked about this, we talked about that, we talked about this, we talked about that. Okay? It's very important. You are able to do this for yourself. It's sad that I've had to have that much interaction with the police. It is. The good thing about it, though, is that more neighbors here are becoming less afraid. That is also a very good thing. I hope some of this information has helped you. If you have any questions, just leave them down below for me, and I'll see if I can't get them answered for you, okay? Thanks. Bye.